God's word is relevant and powerful to our lives. And we've, for a number of weeks now, been looking at the book of the Song of Songs. It's a book that's often skipped over because it's just full of language that just feels, a little bit intimate. It feels like you're eavesdropping on a conversation that you shouldn't. And we have spent a couple of weeks previously looking at the context of this book, why it's part of the Bible, and the general theme of what this book means to us. And if you've missed those, I'm not going to give a significant recap this morning, but I encourage you to go online and to look at week 1 and week 2. Last time we looked at this a couple of weeks ago, the second week of this, we looked at intimacy killers within our relationship. We looked at week 1 how this book is really an expression of a relationship on a number of levels. It's a relationship between the king, probably King Solomon, and a bride, a lover, and destined to be man and wife. And we look and we see the love that is existing in that relationship. We see also that there is a metaphor here of Christ, the groom, and us, the bride, the church. And we looked at how this gives an insight into that relationship. But also we've been looking at how this relationship helps us to apply into our relationships on this earth. And we're going to continue looking at those 3 layers again today. I haven't got long, so I'm going to take my jacket off and get stuck straight in. Are you okay for that? Yeah. Let's look at Song of Songs, chapter 2 together. Words will appear on the screen if you've not got a Bible with you. Reading from the NIV version, and it says this: I am a rose of Sharon, a lily of the valleys. That's she speaking. And then he says, like a lily among thorns is my darling among the young women. She replies, like an apple tree among the trees of the forest is my beloved among the young men. I delight to sit in his shade, and his fruit is sweet to my taste. Let him lead me to the banquet hall, and let his banner over me be love. Strengthen me with raisins, refresh me with apples, for I am faint with love. His left arm is under my head, and his right arm embraces me. Daughters of Jerusalem, I charge you by the gazelles and by the does of the field, do not arouse or awaken love until it so desires. Listen, my beloved, look, here he comes, leaping across the mountains, bounding over the hills. My beloved is like a gazelle or a young stag. Look, there he stands behind our wall, gazing through the windows, peering through the lattice. My beloved spoke and said to me, arise, my darling, my beautiful one, come with me. See, the winter is past and the rains are over and gone. Flowers appear on the earth and the season of singing has come. The cooing of doves is heard in our land. The fig tree forms its early fruit. The blossoming vines spread their fragrance. Arise, come, my darling, my beautiful one, come with me. He replies, my dove, in the clefts of the rock, in the hiding place of the mountainside, show me your face. Let me hear your voice, for your voice is sweet and your face is lovely. Catch for us the little foxes that ruin the vineyard, our vineyards that are in bloom. She replied, my beloved is mine and I am his. He browses among the lilies until the day breaks and the shadows flee. Turn, my beloved, and be like a gazelle or like a young stag on the rugged hills. Let's just stop there. We're only going to get through a few verses of this. But it starts off very much building on what we've looked at previously, of this intense desire and longing that we see within this incredible loving relationship. That there is a yearning and a longing. When they're together, they're wrapped up in each other. When they're apart, they're wrapped up in thoughts and longing to be together. that there is this incredible, intense desire. She ached to be united with the object of her desire. Week 1, we looked at how in the Garden of Eden, that when sin came into the world, that disconnection came into the world. And I believe in many ways you hear preachers talk about a God-shaped void in people's lives, that it's only when they find the Lord in their lives, when they become a Christian, that they feel that bit is filled within them and their life makes sense. I was talking to Katie this morning and she was saying how her life is just transformed, that everything is different since she came to Jesus. And it was just wonderful. I said, it sounds like you've been born again. She said, it feels just like that. That's what happens when we fall in love with Jesus. John Stott, a famous preacher, theologian, he said this: the Bible teaches that heterosexual intercourse in marriage is more than a union. It is a kind of reunion. It's not a union of alien persons who do not belong to one another and cannot appropriately become one flesh. On the contrary, it is the union of two persons who originally were one, were then separated from each other, and now in sexual encounter of marriage come together again. The complementarity of male and female sexual organs is only a symbol at the physical level of a much deeper spiritual complementarity. You know, in our lives, we were designed for connection, to be whole, to be joined. Now, I don't have to revisit old ground here and put all my caveats in about those who are either desirous to be single for the rest of their days or those who are single and are looking. Please don't read this as an incompleteness in your life if you feel called to singleness, because the Bible teaches that actually allows you to be married to the Lord more closely. And there are people I know in life who are incredibly fulfilled in their life, and they have more freedom to express that connection with the world around them. But she goes on to liken herself. She says, I am a rose of Sharon. Interestingly, the Hebrew word for this, rose, was only used one other time in the Old Testament, in the book of Isaiah 35. And it's there translated in a way that doesn't sound quite so glamorous. It's translated as crocus. It doesn't quite sound the same. I am a crocus. But form of crocus is like a common meadow flower, like a lily. So let's not get caught up in the name of plants and roses, and shows how bad my gardening skills. I can't even think of any alternatives. I'm Welsh, daffodils. But this was the lady that last time we looked at this, she said, I am dark. I don't deserve the affections of the lover. I'm affected by the mess of this world. I am dark. But now she says, I am a lily, a crocus, a rose. There was an improvement there. What was the cause of the improvement? I'll tell you what it is. When we are exposed to love, it changes us. When you know that you are loved, it draws something out of you. That's why the gospel of Jesus Christ calls the church to love our community, because we bring the best out of people when we love them. If you want to take a position in life to criticize, to have a go at people, to point out their faults, you will just become a cynical critic. You will not become an agent of transformation. It's when you love people. She knew she was loved. The love of the lover had changed her understanding of who she was. That's how it should be with you and I, with God. That His love that we get exposed to. The Bible says that God doesn't say that God does love. It says God is love, and his love over our lives brings the best out of us, and it transforms us. And if you're here this morning and you think, woe is me, I am a worm, I am awful, I am despised, I am rejected, then you have not met the love of God, because the love of God changes your understanding of who you are, brings revelation into your life so that you know that you are beautiful. Yeah. But he replied back. He said, not just a lily. Verse 2, you're like a lily among thorns. He was saying, you're not common, you are unique. That's right. There's a story of someone who in the Middle East was trying to pick one of these beautiful velvety lilies. And this beautiful lily that they spotted was growing among spiky thorns. And they just saw this beauty and they thought, I have to get that. So they placed their hand among the thorns and they picked the lily and pulled it out. And as they pulled it out, their hand got lacerated with the sharp edges of the thorns that surrounded this lily. Hands lacerated and extracting the beauty. Spurgeon, another famous preacher, he commented that our lover didn't just lacerate his hands to come and pick the beauty that we are before God, that his whole body was lacerated, his hands, his feet, his side with a spear, that a crown of thorns placed upon his head as his rescue mission to pull the beauty out from the thorns of this world. That's you. That's you this morning. That's who you are. That's how God sees you. That's how God understands you. You are beautiful and loved. And he pulls you out from the miry mess of this world. And he sets you in the context of love. We read verse 3, like an apple tree among the trees of the forest is my beloved. Among the young men, I delight to sit in his shade, and his fruit is sweet to my taste. You know, there's a set apart of our life that we read that in the middle of the forest, you go on this long walk through the forest and you see a tree that's different to all the others, and there's fruit and refreshing and life in the middle of that walk that you're on. And Jesus, our lover, is like that place of refreshing. You know, when we seek God, we often say, let's seek the face of the Lord. Do you know God is not hiding? Do you know God has not moved? Do you know he's not running away from you? Do you know God is not saying, I'm going to locate myself in a different place every day, and some days I'm going to be hiding from you, and I hope you do not find me? That's not the form of seeking. God is always in the same place. He's always located. The thing is, we get caught up with the trees that's around. If you want to find God through the work of Jesus, the lacerated body of Jesus, through his death and resurrection, you can come and you can find the life of God. You can seek and find him. The Bible says, those who seek me, find me. Yeah. And he's a place of refreshing. It's a place of life and sustenance and shade and refuge. We're not guessing where he is. We're just trying to work through the other distractions to get to where he is. Verse 4, it says, lead me to the banqueting table. Lead me to the banqueting house. Some people interpret this as like a house of wine or a cellar of wine. You know, wine in the Bible is often symbolic of two things, often the blood. In a few moments' time, we're going to celebrate communion, and we'll take the juice together, and it will be symbolic of the blood of Jesus that has washed over our lives and taken away all of our shame and all of our sin, all of our past, that he has redeemed and rescued us from. But we also read Jesus talks about wine being symbolic of a new thing that he's doing. Talked about having new wineskins for new wine, opening up our lives in order to allow and facilitate the adventures of God to breathe in us and pour in us and to release something new in our day. But this is the key. Let him lead me. Will you let him lead you? Will you let him take your hand and direct you to that place? I love this. Many people have written songs about this and sang this and preached on this over the years. It says, and let his banner over me be love. In our home, Nita is brilliant at doing this. Whenever someone has a birthday in our home, when you pull up on the drive, on the front door, there's usually an embarrassing photograph of that person with a happy birthday message. You walk into the home, there are balloons. I'm thinking, Nita, I'm 43 now. And then you walk into the rooms and there's banners everywhere saying birthday boy. Helps me continue to feel young. And those banners, they have a particular pertinence to that day because they declare something that is a truth and a reality on your journey, that on that day, it is your birthday. Sometimes they stay up a little bit longer for a few days and we eke out the celebrations and we have these reminders around us with all the cards that it's a birthday. It's a special time in our year. But over your life, there's not a banner that says happy birthday. There's not a banner that says you're okay. There's not a banner that says you're accepted. There's a banner that says you are loved. And you know that banner never ever gets taken down? Do you know that banner is a representation of a truth that is daily in your life? It's daily. There's a constant banner over your life that says, I am loved. Constantly. But do you know what we do? We roll it up. We take it down. And we decide that some days we're not. We decide. Sometimes in our relationships, we're going to look in a few moments' time, just for a few minutes, on some issues of earthly relationships and marriage, and some of those calls that are within us, that there's a desperation within society to find the happily ever after, but so many marriages are not happily ever after. In fact, research says the majority are not. And they start off with this great banner on their wedding day and they say, we love one another. But as the years go on, the banner gets a little bit tatty and they begin to take it down and they begin to create other banners that says, toilet seat left up again. Other inventions begin to be the banner over our relationships. This week, Nita, just pass me those shoes a second, will you? On my day off this week, we went for a nice walk with the dog, and it was a lovely day, beautiful sunshine, and I bought these summer shoes last winter. Never worn them before. It's always good to buy out of season. Get some good deals. I like to call it prophetic shopping. The powers of the age to come are breaking through. I'm ready for summer. And I'd never worn them before, and it was a lovely day, and I thought, I'm going to wear my new summer shoes on this nice walk. I'm not going to wear socks because you can see the socks sticking out of the edge, and I just didn't want to look like a British tourist. So I thought, I'm just going to go for a nice walk in these new summer shoes. And so I go on this walk, and they're really comfortable. They're really nice. And I thought, I'm really pleased the bargain I had with these shoes. But as the miles clocked up on this walk, I began to feel some pain in a number of locations of my feet inside these shoes. Well, we stopped off on a bench, and I took my shoes off, and I had 5 big blisters. You see, what often starts out in our relationships as nice and comfortable and loving and perfectly fitting sometimes rubs up against each other. And I know loads of relationships where something that started out good ended up being a blister. God has never designed relationships for that. This has multiple layers to it. This has a layer about your walk with God, and we're going to come to that in a moment. But let's look at our earthly relationships just for a moment. Let me give you some statistics. Someone once said, an author of a book called Love Illuminated, he said this: we spend our youth asking, how do I find love? And then we spend our midlife asking, how do I get it back? Some research found that 86% of marriages in their first year said that they were satisfied. By the 7th year, that was less than 50%. Research found that about 50% of marriages now end in divorce. Statistics I came across, 2009, it was 47%. But on top of those 50% ending in divorce, about another 10 to 15% separate but don't file for divorce. And then around another 7% are desperately unhappy in their marriage, but they just do nothing about it. That means that the quest in life for love and connection and the happy ever after Disney story that people have, that Cinderella will meet her Prince Charming and they will end happily ever after. According to these statistics, Cinderella too would be a pretty horrible story. Because maybe he wasn't as charming as she thought he was. Maybe he got frustrated with her small feet after a while. But this claims that only 28% of marriages can claim the happy ever after. Did some reading around this. Why is this? Why do we have this insatiable desire for love, for belonging, for connection? And then when we find it, why do we have this destructive side to us that seems to go in different directions? And I know within this room we've got people who have experienced the pain and the trauma of failed relationships. Please do not receive anything I'm saying as a condemnation or a challenge against your life and your story and your life. We thank God that He brings new starts into our lives. And I'm sure that as I look at some of these thoughts in just a moment, that it will resonate with some of the experiences that you had within your life, within your relationship. Time magazine, that well-known theological journal, concluded this: the reason why only 28% of marriages potentially claim a happy ever after is because boredom becomes an acceptable norm within our relationships. What starts off romantic becomes predictable. That there are times at the start of a relationship you hold hands and you find it a novelty to think, I know what they're going to say in response to that question someone's asked, and it feels like a blessing. It feels, wow, we're really getting to know each other. This is romantic. This is lovely. We're really joining together. And then it's, oh, I know what he's going to say now. So predictable. And we begin to get bored. We lose the art of surprise. And we take that banner that was placed up on our wedding day or on the moment we met and we fell in love, and that banner that sat over the relationship that said, the banner over us is love. That lovely moment when people travel from all over the nation to gather for your wedding day, and you put so much effort and energy into looking so radiant and wonderful, where you had such a journey to bring to that day, and it's clear that the banner over your relationship was love, and now it's rolling up, and now it just feels monotonous. How do we stop the love banner from being rolled up? Interesting. There was a study done that compared those who had started a marriage off on a love basis and those who started a relationship off on an arranged marriage basis. As a father, I quite like that one. Sorry, daughter. And boyfriend who's watching online this morning. Just remember that. It made a comparison. It tracked the journey of those who had that chance encounter and they held hands and the birds sang around the countenance of the air around them and they twinkled and that once clumsy guy started to pirouette and fall in love, that there was nothing too difficult, against those who never met one another and were told, this is who you're marrying. They made some interesting observations. They found that those who start off in a love marriage start off happier than those in an arranged marriage. But after 10 years, those statistics swap around. That arranged marriages are happier after 10 years. Why is that? So they dug into this a bit more. And they found that those who met on the romance of the occasion, on the love that sang beautiful songs around their joining together, that they relied on that emotion and on that magic of love. Please hear the context I'm using that. Don't send me letters. But those who met on that basis, they relied on that to sustain them. And it became boring. Whereas those who joined together without that love encounter, that they realized they had to work at this. They had to create synergy and connection and interest. That if this was going to work, they needed to put some investment in. And they found that the work that needs to go into a relationship often wasn't happening. See, most people look for a head over heels moment at the start of a relationship, but sadly, if this is the only basis the relationship is put together on, then it often ends up with a heel over the head. Feelings are not enough. They need to be built on. You see, the faults were there in the other person when you first met. They've always been there. They didn't start to become imperfect after you got married. They were imperfect already, but you loved them and you overlooked their imperfections. But you have now made it your quest to change them and to remove their imperfections. And now there's a battle that takes place because you're trying to change once something and somebody that you loved, but now it becomes a project. What starts as unconditional love becomes conditional. They say that we should concentrate on the strengths of one another, not the weaknesses to fix. We should celebrate the diversity. Nira and I went to see a leadership coach together a number of years ago, and I haven't asked her permission to share this, so I hope I'm okay. I'll let you know next week if not. In an email when another pastor comes in to lead the service because Mark's gone away for some recuperation. But I went to see a leadership coach, and basically this leadership coach worked on finding out what the strengths were, the fundamental strengths that you had. And I've got to be honest, there were times when I would get frustrated with Nita. I don't know how that's possible. But there was a time when the enemy got into my thinking and told me that there were some things I should get frustrated with Nita about. And tell you what one of them was, and it's amazing to think how this has changed now, but I like timekeeping. I like, if we say 10 o'clock, 10 o'clock's a good time to me. Nita loves people. So that means if this meeting starts at 10 o'clock and she's met 3 people on the way in, she'll be at 20 past. And I used to think, this is so frustrating. 10 o'clock, come on, 10 o'clock. But we did a strength profile of Nita's strengths. And we found out that these shouldn't be frustrations. These should be strengths that are different in one another that we celebrate. And we find a way of celebrating that in each other. We found that rather than jarring together, we actually fit differences together that helped us make a whole. And it was so releasing. But so often relationships, they begin to battle against the weakness rather than celebrate the strength. They say we need to inject excitement, not just romance into our relationship. There was a 10-week study carried out between couples who engaged in pleasant activities versus couples who engaged in exciting activities. They found after 10 weeks, the couples that put the investment into exciting activities were stronger than those who did pleasant activities. Putting some excitement into our relationship is something you have to work on. It's not something that just comes easy and natural. And if you're relying on that tank of love and romance that you experienced when you first met, and you're trying to just live off the drips of that in the present, your relationship will at best be on a life support machine from that moment. But if you invest and think, how am I going to bring change and excitement and variation into our relationship, then you keep it fresh. And in rounding up, as we come around communion together, the final moments, God has this same complaint over us with him. Revelation chapter 2. Can we put this on the screen? Verse 2 to 4, it says this. I know your deeds. I know your hard work and your perseverance. I know that you've become to a place where you can't tolerate just the wickedness of sin around you. That you have tested those who claim to be apostles and are not, and have found them to be false. You've got discernment in your life. You have persevered, you've kept going, you've kept plugging away, you've endured hardships in my name, you've been in prison, you've been shipwrecked, you've done all those things, and you have not grown weary. Well done, everybody. Well done. Yes. Yet, I hold this against you. You have forsaken the love that you had at first. I wonder if that's where you're at this morning. You remember that day when you came to Christ, and the tears rolled down your cheeks, and the life came into your body, and the shame lifted off you, and you ran and you danced. And as we started off with that song, Oh Happy Day, this morning, you were thinking back to that happy day, not this happy day, because you're living off yesterday's blessings, because you've developed a form of religion that lacks relationship, because you have become bored in your Christian life, because you haven't invested. And as we take communion together this morning, I invite you to make a pledge and a commitment before the Lord to return to your first love, to open up your heart and say this morning, Father, I don't want to operate my relationship with you or with others just out of the monotony of routine. Father, I don't want my walk with you, my walk with others to be obsessed with the negatives, the challenges. Father, I want to invite you to come and reveal to me again that banner over me, which is love. As you take symbols of the bread and the juice this morning, symbolic of the body and the blood of Jesus, the Bible says that none of us are worthy to take this except for his forgiveness over our lives. As part of your response to me might be, God, I've left you out. God, I've just relied on past blessings. God, I've been busy, but I've not been engaged with you. I'm sorry. Jesus didn't come into the world so I could just feel good about myself and go to church. Jesus came into the world so that you could be in a loving, growing relationship with him that is growing. That the best days are ahead. The best is yet to come. That as he reveals from one degree of glory to another, that you are changed. That you do draw closer to him. That your heart is becoming more like his. So if you know Jesus this morning, we invite you to come and take these emblems as they're passed around in your conversation with the Lord. Say, God, I want to return to you. Fire up our walk with you with imagination, oh God. Break us out of ruts and routines and help us, Lord, to know the freshness of walk with you. Help us to invest, Lord. Help us to not get lost in the forest and the woods, but help us to rest under the sustenance of your apple tree. Sweetness and the beauty and the joy. Help us to live under that banner of love, that we might be changed.